Hello, guys, and welcome to my From Losing Record to Promising Season series. This is essentially going to be where I am talking about teams that have a decent cap number and who I think can pull, a season next year where they potentially, can make a climb or even, do well enough to potentially make the postseason. Obviously, the two teams here that I think it's very possible for are the Patriots and the Bears. I think that, the Patriots, the main reason why is they have Drake May, who proved to be very good. The Bears, while they had a very bad season, they had really bad coaching, and now they have a new head coach, and they have a very solid amount of talent, if not a more than solid talent. The Titans I put on here because while I think that their defense has the chance to still be pretty good and they only have to fix a few things on offense, their division was overall kind of weak last year, and they could potentially rise up because I think that they have a weaker division. And now, speaking of the Raiders, it's kind of iffy and a who knows, with the Raiders. I do think that having Brady there and it being his first offseason and that this team has 96 million, I think that they could really go and sign some necessary players and talent so that they can give the other teams a run for their money, because we all saw the Broncos with, minimal talent last year and they did, a lot better. Obviously on the defensive side, they played way better than the season before. Drafting a quarterback really helped them, and I think the Raiders, it's like they have, I would say at this point, they obviously have a little bit less talent than the Broncos had. But then you look at the Chiefs, who, they franchise takes Trey Smith, and they're just essentially not going to be able to do anything in free agency. And then the Chargers have a chance to, be a lot better, but I expect their division to kind of be more, I wouldn't say mediocre, but it has the chance to where it's like, the Chiefs, if they somehow play and win as many games as they did last year, it'll be insane. But I don't expect them to be the powerhouse that they were. And I don't expect, and maybe the Chargers, maybe they sign the necessary offensive pieces, but it's like you never know, if who you get is right and whatever else, even though their defense was clearly a lot better. But moving on, we're going to start with the Bears here, and then we're going to go Titans, Raiders, and then finish up with the Patriots. And I'm just going to type below here a few moves that I think, would make sense for each team. And I guess on a side note, some teams that didn't make the list, I didn't put the Giants here because I think that they have internal problems and they don't quite have enough cap space. I didn't put the Niners because they really, besides, they have to extend Purdy, and they really don't have that much cap space, and they were the worst in their division last year. I didn't put the Saints because of their cap issues. The Panthers don't have that much cap space. And then in terms of like AFC, I didn't put the Browns because we all know their cap space is ridiculous. And I guess I could have warranted putting the Jaguars here, but they really don't have a lot of cap space either. And I was like, let's leave this to, teams that were bad, that were above like 50 million in cap space, even though the disparity between the Titans and the Patriots is obviously huge. So starting off with the Bears, obviously 61 million in cap space at this point. Looking at their team, they're losing a good amount of linemen, which I don't think they care at all about. And apparently they have a deal on the table to trade for a Rams lineman, to start to shore up that O-line, because as we all know, the offensive line of the Bears was pretty bad last year. Here's what I'm going to say in terms of that. I think that this is a team that goes after Jedrick Wills. I think he's still a fairly young player. He might come off cheap a little bit. And, while he's not as big as Penei Sewell, he can play tackle and he can go and he can play right tackle. So he's kind of a player that I think would fit, and you'd sign him to like a 3-year or a 2-year deal, more than likely, to make sure that he's healthy from last season. Another lineman that I might look at, who did play all of last year and was considered one of the best, potentially would be Ronnie Stanley. I think Ronnie Stanley, is still a great lineman. He was able to play pretty well last year, protecting the blind side of Lamar Jackson. And, I don't know if he'll command a big price, I guess. A blind side tackle, he probably will to some extent, but he's someone I would go for. Someone else that I said that if the Bears want to find they're like a ground pound running back in free agency that Ben Johnson, does covet because he had David Montgomery, and then even Jahmyr Gibbs was a powerful runner for, having the speed that he is I said that they should go for Nick Chubb. He obviously had that really bad injury a couple years ago, but he came back last year, and it's like we all know that the Browns were just a terrible team, and who the heck knows, I'm sure Chubb still has it. He's not one of those guys to me that even though he's turning 30, we still saw Derrick Henry do incredible things last year. I think that Nick Chubb, with the change of scenery, and you shore up the O-line, go and, grab him. The other thing about the Bears that I think, needs to be addressed is that they only have 3 wide receivers. If they don't re-sign anybody before free agency on the 12th, they only have 3 wide receivers on the roster. They're losing Keenan Allen, who played well for them last year. And then they have DJ Moore, Adunze, and God, what is his name? This Tyler Scott. Who the heck knows who Tyler Scott is? No offense to him. But looking at, who's available at wide receiver, there's a good amount of guys. Now, personally, I don't think that they should go for any of these big marquee guys. I mean, it might say something if you go for like a Devontae Adams, who was already released, Stephon Diggs. You could re-sign Keenan Allen. Maybe Amari Cooper. I just don't see it. I think that they need like a slot wide receiver. And I think they need someone that's going to kind of play the role of that, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously isn't like a blazer or a speedy guy, but he's a shifty guy that gets open. I personally think that if you're looking at, the guys available, it might honestly be a sneaky grab for these guys to grab Brandon Cooks, who to me, he was with obviously the Cowboys last year, and he's always been kind of a sneaky player. Let me move this. A sneaky player, especially in the red zone. So if you're the Bears, I would kind of target these 4 guys. You have $61 million. Maybe you don't have enough money to sign both tackles. Nick Chubb to me could cost anywhere from like, 12 to 15 million maybe. Might be a little excessive. And then Brandon Cooks shouldn't be crazy expensive, I wouldn't think. But it's like you get these guys and then some rookies, and some other guys that you believe could be good for your O-line, and you're looking at a very strong, like, Bears offensive resurgence where you can't blame the O-line all year. Now, moving on to the Titans. The Titans, obviously, with $53 million, and let me see here quickly. So, looking at the Titans, obviously, what we've seen with them is that their offense has struggled. And it's like, let me look at their defense. So their defense, the only notable guys that are really, really leaving, that were starters were Sebastian Joseph Day and then Quandre Diggs, their free safety. And then it's like, you look at the rest of these guys, I think that, they're pretty good on defense, to be honest with you. It's like you might go for a free safety, but it's not like that's a great position of need. You might, defensive end obviously kind of makes sense and that sort of thing. But it's like, I guess the other thing is that you might go and you might try to find, another pass rusher, but their DNs they're not even pass rushers. They have their outside linebackers for that, like Harold Landry and that sort of thing. And then it's like on offense, you still have Calvin Ridley. Who knows what you're gonna do at quarterback? You still have Will Levis. He's the only QB on the roster, assuming Mason Rudolph walks. And then it's like, in terms of running back, you have Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears, and then Julius Chestnut. But Julius Chestnut is a restricted free agent, so it's like, I mean, you're more than likely going to get him back. I think your line isn't terrible. I think that, you could improve there. But I think that, if you're the Titans, you're probably going to be settling for a good amount of these like cheaper bargain players because you only have 53 million. So it's like, if you go for a marquee guy, you're not going to have much money left. Personally, looking at their team, I don't think you go for wide receiver. I think that you maybe go for, potentially a tight end. And it's like, it might not be crazy to say, but I actually think that this is a team that could benefit from getting Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki is, I said he was the top free agent tight end in a prior video, but I think that this guy could be, if they say that they're going to draft Cam Ward on this team, and they keep on saying it, and they keep on saying that, like, oh yeah, he's really good in the pocket type of thing. But it's like, I don't know if this team is ready to move on from Will Levis. I think Will Levis plays with a good competitive spirit, has decent arm talent. He just makes bad decisions, which you can rectify and you can fix. I think that he would be able to do a lot better if he had a security blanket type guy like Mike Gesicki, And then it's like Mike Gesicki with his, his length, his frame, his skill set, you instantly have a guy there. And it's like, they said that they won't trade the number 1 overall pick, but it's like, you could also draft a wide receiver, which I've said that there are guys that you could maybe take with the number 1 overall pick, and you could instantly make a focal point. And then those guys aren't expensive. I do think, obviously, this team, would need, another wide receiver, because besides Ridley, Nick Westbrook-Akine leaves. Tyler Boyd is leaving. Now, like, he was, he's getting up there in age. And then you have Treylon Burks, Bryce Oliver, Mason Kinsey, and then a few guys that are, third string on the depth chart. So you're looking at guys that are, wide receivers again. Who do you bring in? I think you bring in a guy, that he'll probably, he probably will get an inflated, contract just because of how scary he was before the injury last year. But Chris Godwin is a guy that it's like, if you get these two guys in free agency, if you're able to somehow pull this, because Gesicki, obviously a good tight end, but they're not expensive, and then Godwin, and then maybe you address your O-line a tiny bit, and then you address your O-line a tiny bit in the draft, or you trade down and you shore up on a lot of picks and you bolster that defense some more, because I think the defense could be a strength of this team. They were keeping them in games for the most part last year. And I think that this team is, like I said before, they're in a weaker division. And it's like, these are the only two moves I'm going to give this team. I think that it would, and then you draft a running back as well in the draft. But if you're, to me, if you are the Titans, you try to get these two, because a tight end is a world of difference as a security blanket. And, you might be able to pay Gesicki a little bit more than he's worth and still be able to go after Godwin. Now moving on to the Raiders. So the Raiders obviously have $96 million. It's the one, positive going into this offseason with them, because obviously they've been very, people have been talking trash about them, but it's like they've got Brady, who's won a good amount of championships, and I'm sure he's made it aware that it's like it's impossible to turn this around in one off season. But $96 million, you have a lot of spending power. I'm going to quickly say that they will go after Godwin. It is without a doubt in my mind that Chris Godwin could very potentially be a Raider next year. Godwin's a very good wide receiver. He's good at, creating separation. He doesn't even need that much separation, and the quarterback can just like dump it to him, a couple yards after the line of scrimmage, and you can get 10 plus yards from him, and there's no doubt in my mind that he will return partially to form. Another player that I think that they could go after that, to kind of fix this wide receiver room as well would maybe be Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs. I think that Diggs, obviously coming off an injury, but it's like you don't ever really lose that kind of route running and that ability. And it's like, with that injury, he might be a little bit cheaper. Knowing Diggs, maybe not, but I think that he's a player that is definitely worth going for. And now looking at kind of who's leaving, you have for wide receivers right now, you have Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers. And then Ramel Caden, whoever that is. Obviously, we all know that their tight end situation is that Michael Mayer is likely to be traded because Brock Bowers balled out and had a crazy rookie season. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be the Raiders without talking about this. I think that it's a very high probability that they actually go after Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold, ends up a Raider on a team like this where it's like, and then, maybe you have Diggs and Godwin, and then that attracts those two or something. And not that Darnold is like a high marquee known guy, but he did well last year. Sam Darnold very logically could get paid, by the Raiders, and then it's like looking at, the rest of their team, obviously they've said that they're not going to trade Max Crosby. Some other guys that are looking like they're, going to leave are Malcolm Kuntz. Trevon Merrick is set to become a free agent, and then Marcus Epps. So you need safety help. You also need, cornerback help, because you've got Not that they were any good, but you have Nate Hobbs and then Nate Hobbs leaving and Darnay Holmes, so it's like the only cornerbacks you still have are Jacorian Bennett and then Jack Jones. And it's like people don't know these guys. People don't know either of those guys. And this is a video where I'm only talking about who are going to be free agents. So it's like looking at, DB, looking at cornerback, you have Carlton Davis, Charvarius Ward, DJ Reed, who looks like he's going to be highly coveted. A lot of these guys, not like spring chickens anymore. I'm looking at this list and it's like the only young ones are Jeff Okuda and CJ Henderson and that sort of thing. And then it's like some of these other guys. I mean, I guess, there's Eric Stokes of the Packers, Christian Fulton, who played for the Chargers last year, who, isn't too bad and I guess isn't too old. Maybe if they're trying to play this bump and run or maybe even Asante Samuel, pull him over. It's like, I think that you're going to have to go for one of these guys who's not marquee. I don't think they're going to be able to compete for DJ Reed with all the other problems they have. But I also think that, like, looking at this, I don't think it's going to be their primary concern. I think that they're going to go for O-line. And if I was them, I would sign Cam Robinson. I would grab Cam Robinson to start to shore up that, that O-line. Maybe go and sign, Alex Kappa at guard as well. And I think that that's going to be, a good, start to fixing this team, and that sort of thing. I realize I'm kind of running out of room here. Let me adjust this because the Patriots, we'll move this here. And Patriots could be a very long list, obviously. But looking at, this for the Raiders, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs, you might not go for 2 wide receivers, but it's like you don't have much talent there, and there is decent talent at wide receivers in the draft, but you have more pressing needs. If you have a QB that you are going to move forward with, he's going to need protection. So it's like Cam Robinson and Alex Kappa, 2 serviceable linemen that are instant upgrades to, whatever riffraff you had last year, and you can start to build that O-line. Now, moving on to the Patriots, who, as we all know, have the most cap space. I think that, their division is still going to be pretty tough. I don't know if the Jets can turn it around in 1 year with the situation they've dealt from themselves. But then I think, the Dolphins, maybe they can turn it around. They're such an off and on team, as it seems. And then the Bills, obviously, the Patriots, they weren't exactly like whooped by the Bills, but I think the Patriots, with the right mindset could have a turnaround and have closer games. But moving on, I'm going to look at their pending free agents here real quick. So the Patriots not losing a lot on offense. It looks here like for tight end, they're, Austin Hooper, Jacoby Brissett, QB, running back, Jamichael Hasty. And then I guess for right guard, they have Lester Cotton, who is going to be a restricted free agent. In terms of defense, they're Dietrich Wise Jr., Daniel Ekuale. Sorry if I butchered that. Christian Ellis, who's their slot linebacker, and is a restricted free agent, so potentially Jonathan Jones, and then that's it. They're keeping the main core of their team. I guess Joey Sly is going to be gone, their kicker, but in any case, they're not losing a lot. But it's like I said, they don't have much talent. Their O-line was obviously a problem. You want to protect Drake May. You want to protect, the the family, the team jewels in the sense where it's like if we don't have May, we don't have a shot really at winning. So it's like let me go and kind of give a similar synopsis. I think that you'd go after Brandon Scherf. You go after Brandon Scherf as he is, a little bit older, but he's a guard and he's always been a pretty good, right guard. I think that Brandon Scherf, you go out and you get him, and it's like that's a very solid signing. I think if you're looking for a center, because I don't really think I really know their center, David Andrews. I don't really know their center. You can go and you can grab Ryan Kelly, a little bit older, but a good center who, has been playing for many, many years now, 9 years, but is, going to be 32. But as a center, it's like it doesn't really matter as much. I think that Ryan Kelly could instantly kind of be a leader in that, and has played on what it has been a pretty solid O-line, for the Colts for however many years. So looking at this, you Brandon Scherf, Ryan Kelly, you still kind of need a tackle. So Tyron Smith, if we're looking at tackles, Tyron Smith is available. He was pretty good. Morgan Moses has always been kind of an Iron Man. Obviously, both leaving the Jets and that sort of thing. The player that I would, the player that I would say that I like, for, this team and looking at all these free agents that are available is I actually really, really like. I'm actually gonna say it. I'm gonna say, Jedrick Wills again. I think that Wills is an upgrade from what you have. You might not have to spend very much, and then you still have a ton of money to play with. And it's like, to me, one thing that kind of lacked on, New England last year was their running backs. Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, kind of good, but like, is he a guy that, is going to be able to carry this team eventually? I personally think that you go out and you grab Najee Harris. It just seems like he's a guy that he's going to be able to come in, play, be able to run, but then also be kind of a security blanket option. Because I said, he's definitely a top 5 running back free agent. And it's like he's got good speed, good power, and he has good hands for a bigger guy. And he can do quite a bit. And he would definitely be an upgrade from Stevenson. So it's like you look at Najee Harris. So it's like at this point, we have 3 linemen, which, they solely need, but can afford Najee Harris. And then one other thing that's been talked about is, what do they need at wide receiver? I've kind of said that I think that their receivers have gotten a bad shake, because once Drake May was starting and he was playing, they weren't doing terribly. I like Kayshon Boutte. And even, Jalen Polk did well, and then it's like you have Kendrick Bourne, and Demario Douglas to me didn't really show up enough. I think that Jalen Polk deserves a little bit more of a shot, and that sort of thing. But it's like the 2 things besides what I've already listed that I think they need is I do think that they need they may need like a proven guy to kind of show these guys. And I think a guy that would be good would be Amari Cooper. Someone who he won't cost a crazy amount. You maybe sign him for 1 or 2 years, to see, because he's always been healthy. He's always, been a possession guy, and you sign Amari Cooper, or maybe you also go for, potentially Keenan Allen. I wouldn't have said this an off season ago because of his injury issues, but he was able to be on the field for the majority of last year. And he's another guy who's a possession dude. And Drake May, as we saw, is very accurate. And you pair that with a guy who's got strong hands, and you've got an instant kind of tandem. It reminds me of, Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, how Cortland Sutton was able to catch these things in tight windows and strong hands last year, and that sort of thing. So looking now to their last position need, I think these guys need a pass rusher. I think that they go and, they go after a guy, that's young, that's going to fit with them and is going to do well. I think they go and they grab Chase Young, a big stud edge. And then it's like, there was someone else that I was kind of thinking about, played for the Giants last year. Let me see. Azeez Ojulari. I think Azeez Ojulari would be very, very good for this team. And he's obviously seeking a good payday. And this would be kind of crazy, obviously, if they could pull it off and signing a lot of these guys. You might not need to get them, like I said, you might not need to get Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper, and you might not need to get both Chase Young and Azeez Ojulari, but you get players that, will be an impact, and they aren't the oldest, and, maybe you kind of solve your pass rush, because the quickest solution to defense is to being able to altering how the QB throws and putting pressure on him. So that's going to kind of wrap it for this video. Keep in mind, I'm going to say it again. They don't need to sign all these guys that I have, written down here, but these are kind of the moves I would try to make if I were any of these teams with good cap space. And I only put 2 for the Titans because honestly, I just don't think they have the money to play, with all of these teams. And there are other good teams with more cap, but I kind of wanted to cover the bottom dweller teams and then say who I would sign or who I would go for to improve these teams. But comment who you think, these teams may go for, who, which players may sign with these teams, and, and I'll feel free to have a discussion with me in the comments. But if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see content at least twice a week. I'm thinking of releasing a little bit more, moves and, some other like good teams that have good spending money, later this week besides on Friday, because, we have free agency coming up next week and it's going to be a fun time. But thank you all for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.